Many of you have contacted Pretty Pink Posh and let them know that you want to see something in their releases other than flowers, which are beautiful but don't work for every card that you're creating. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel, and in today's video I'll be sharing a whole bunch of the June release from Pretty Pink Posh. There are sports, there is space, there are trucks, lots of different things that are not flowers that you could use on a whole bunch of different cards. It's a pretty big release, so let's just dive right in. This is the brick background stencil, and I'll be using that today on a piece of off-white cardstock. This is actually alabaster from Spellbinders. Now I have the cardstock cut to about 5.5 or 5.25 by 5.25, and I put it on my grip mat. I made 2 of those. This is the city buildings dies. You can see you get a layerable street and layerable buildings, and I'll show you exactly how I layered them together to create the look of actual buildings and a street. So to start with the street, I have a piece of black cardstock, and I know it's not going to need to be bigger than 5.5, so I just cut it vertically on an A2 piece of black cardstock. Then I used the little street strip, which is that center cutout, and I placed it right in the middle of the black cutout cardstock. Then I put some tape runner behind it, and I'm layering it over white streets that I cut out. That will create the black street with the white lines. For the buildings, I'm cutting out kind of a grayish silver. It's like a brushed silver cardstock, and then also cutting out just the building layer of the blue, light blue cardstock. So that'll be the windows. This is the fancy card dies. It comes with 3 dies that look like this, which can be flaps on a card. So for this largest die, I just taped it down, and I'm using some Distress Oxide ink to ink blend a sky on this. Now I'll place a little liquid glue. There's actually a little almost die cut line, but it's not die cut, it's actually just scored so that you can place it on the edge of an A2 piece of cardstock and fold it behind, and you get this fun fold. You can just use one fold, but if you use all 3 together, you get this cool concept of a card with 3 folds that open in different directions. So the large fold and the medium fold I put on the right hand side. You could put it however you want. And I put the smallest fold on the left hand side. So you'll see here I'm lining up the cardstock on the left hand side of the A2 card. I'll open up those flaps so that I don't adhere anything down, and then adhere it down to the back of the A2 piece of cardstock. And then I have folds that go from left to right, and 3 of them, 2 bricks and 1 sky. So this is the base of the card that I'm going to create. I cut the buildings down to about 4.25, and I'll place a little bit of liquid adhesive behind them and place them on the sky background. Next, I'll take a street and cut that down to 4.25 as well, a little bit of liquid glue behind that, and place that down right on the second flap, which is a brick. So I'll place that down and make sure that it is inside and outside the card. I have 2 streets. So the second street is going to go on the front of that brick, which is going to fold into the front of the card. I hope that all makes sense, but you'll see as we open it up. So first flap has bricks and street, second flap has bricks and street, third flap right now has buildings. I'm taking the largest fancy die and cutting it out of the street so that I can place it right at the bottom there. This is the helper vehicles, stamps, and dies. Really great set with an ambulance, a police car, a fire engine, and then lots of different accessories and some great sentiments. So I stamped, colored, and die cut those out, and I'm using those all over my card. So inside, next to the buildings, I have the police car. Then on the second flap, I have the ambulance. And on the first flap, on the front of the card, I have the fire engine, as well as a fire hydrant, a little hose, a little water spurting out. I actually put the water on the second flap, so that's kind of a fun way to mix and match these little pieces and accessories so that you have a little bit of everything on every flap. Now I placed the card back back in my Misty. This is the sky flap, and I did tape it down because I was afraid it wasn't going to stick. And then I used the sentiment, "Thanks for saving the day" on it. So this is a fun lift the flap card where you get 3 different little scenes that all kind of layer up together, and you still have space on the white cardstock base to create your message. This is the Construction Editions stamps and dies. Again, you have a bunch of different vehicles and then a bunch of different accessories. So I stamped, colored, and cut these out with the dies and created another lift the flap card, but I didn't want to put you through the entire creation, so I'll just show you each of the flaps. And I love how the front flap is kind of like a gritty sand using Hero Arts embossing powder, and then there's grass, and then there's the street. So for this lift the flap, I wanted to show you the 3 dies that cut out those flaps. And then here is the layered shooting star stencils. This is a layering stencil. So I am stenciling on dark colored cardstock with Distress Oxide inks. Now it will be a little bit of the color because it does sit a little bit on top of that cardstock, but it won't be as much of the color as if you did it on white cardstock. But this gives you a really easy background of galaxies and stars. So I did them on all the lift the flaps that I created and that background piece, that A2 background piece. So this is how I'm going to adhere them this time. I used some double-sided tape right on the little flap. And you can see there where it folds. That's that little score line that the die cuts out. So once you line it up with your A2 piece of cardstock, and in this case, it's the blue piece with stenciling on it, I want to line it up and then fold it down and adhere it to the back of that cardstock. Now, you could place this on another piece of just plain blue if you didn't like to see the little flaps. I thought that was going to start to get kind of thick, so I just left it as is. But here we go with the smallest flap. Again, is going to go on the left-hand side of that A2 card. So check this out, a galaxy background with 3 different flaps. This is the Outer Space Stamps and Dies. I love this little set. It is so cute and it's so much fun to color. There are little planets, there's a sun, there's even a little UFO. And so I stamped out a bunch of the images and then colored them and die cut them out so that I had a bunch of different images to play with. Then this is the Planet Shaker dies. Instead of making it into a shaker, I cut the planet out of purple glitter cardstock and the rings around the planet out of blue cardstock and adhered those together. Now I'll put some liquid glue on the back of this entire planet and I'll place it on the largest flap. I'm also using the Rocketship shaker dies not as a shaker. I put the Rocketship together and I'll adhere that on the second flap. Now I have all these little cute images that I can sprinkle around those 2 main images there. I'm going to stamp and heat emboss the sentiment from the Outer Space Stamps and Dies that says "Love you to the moon." So I'll use the fancy card rectangle and little scallop background to layer up that sentiment on the blue cardstock over white cardstock, and I'll place that inside the card on that background. Now, you could obviously put a little sentiment in white gel pen somewhere, but I think this card is so cute, I'm just gonna leave it as is. And here you can see all the little elements that I added, the little planets, the little comets, and then that sentiment with the moon and stars. Moving from space to construction vehicles, this is the Big Dump Truck dies. Again, a layering die set with lots of little pieces, but they're very easy to put together. It's not teeny tiny little bitty pieces, but you have things like the window of the dump truck, and I decided to make mine striped yellow and black, so I cut out both pieces there. You also have wheels and hubcaps and other things. Here's the big excavator truck dies. Similar to that big dump truck, this layers all together to create a really cute excavator truck. I know maybe excavators aren't supposed to be cute, but I think this one's adorable, and I love that you can add and the little hinges on each of the parts of the arm that scoops up the dirt, and you have the dirt that you can put inside that scoop as well. So really fun little elements of details that really make this a cute die set. Next, I took some wonky rectangles dies and cut out some swoops for dirt. And then I'm taking a piece of blue cardstock and ink blending some white pigment ink clouds on top. Now that I have the dump truck and the excavator together, I'm putting a piece of black fun foam strip on the large dump truck. First, I'll take the largest hill that I created and adhere that down to the background sky. Then I'll pop up the smaller hill and adhere that down on top. So it looks like we have two hills in the background. And next I'll take the dump truck, put it on that front hill there since it's like the largest die cut that I have. And then I'll take the excavator, put it on the background. Now I did have to put a little piece of foam behind the dump truck to make sure that didn't get crunched. And then I stamped "I like the way you roll" right next to that little excavator. A really fun card to put together. This is the sports stamps and dies. You have lots of sports represented here. So you've got tennis, baseball, basketball, volleyball, soccer, football, and what else? And also a little trophy cups and a medal. So I stamped "You're an All-Star," and I'm taking one of the stitch stars, which I'll show you in another card coming up, and cut it out of gold mirror cardstock and popped it up in the center of an A2 card. Now I have all my little elements again. They're colored, they're stamped, they're colored, and they're die cut. So I can just play with circling them around this large gold star in the center. The sentiment says "You're an All-Star," and that's popped up on that star. And then I have a couple of the different accessories. I stamped them all out so I could have the medal, the soccer ball, the football, tennis racket with the little tennis ball, baseball bat with the little baseball, basketball has a little stippling on it to make that texture, and then that string of stars for the sentiment as well. For this next card, we're starting with the layered sports balls stencils. So again, there are several different sports represented here. So I'm starting with the bases of the basketballs and the footballs, and then there's a detail layer that you can put right on top. So for the footballs, I'm using white pigment ink for those football stitches. For the volleyballs, I'm using a gray Distress Oxide ink. For the basketballs, I used black soot Distress Oxide ink, and for the soccer balls, I also used the black soot. So just a couple of different ink pads can really put this background together and make it super special. For the tennis balls, I used some Distress Oxide ink in Squeezed Lemonade. And then for the detail on those tennis balls, those white lines, I did bring out the white pigment ink again. And it does sit well on top of that Distress Oxide. For the baseballs, because I only did the red stitching, I decided to outline them with a thin ultra fine Sharpie, and I did outline the volleyballs with a gray colored pencil. Now don't use super sharp pencils on your grip mats, but this one was pretty dull and I was able to outline the volleyballs. So now I'll use the football shaker. And the football shaker, you can create just a football like I did with the Rocketship or the Planet, or you can cut out an outline by placing the inner die inside the outer shape and cutting it out. So you can see I have the full shape football in brown cardstock. Then I have two of the outlines in foam, and here I have a piece of brown cardstock of the outline placed on some acetate. I'll adhere the two foam pieces together to give myself enough dimension to have the shaker goodies move around. Then I'll place the white stitching die cuts on top of the acetate to create that look. And then I'll take the doubled up fun foam and put it on the football background that I cut out, and then place that down on the stenciled panel that I created. Next up, we have the Construction Zone shaker beads. I thought these were the perfect color to go inside my football. They really went with the rest of the elements of the stenciled background. And then I'll place that window on top. I have the sentiment that says "Way to go, champ," and I'll pop that up right under the stitching on the football. So really fun card for a sports lover. Next up, we have the Stitched Stars dies, and I love every stitched element dies that Pretty Pink Posh creates, but stars happen to be one of my favorite shapes. So I decided to use one of the largest stars and cut it out of the center of an A2 piece of white cardstock. Then I put tape runner all around the star, and this way I was able to create a shaker window. So I have a smaller piece of acetate than A2, and I'll just place that on top of that tape runner. Next, I'll take another piece of A2 white cardstock and I'll run thin lines of fun foam all around that piece of cardstock. Next, I have the Patriotic shaker beads, and I'll pour those inside that rectangle that I created, making sure that that rectangle is large enough to hold the star. This is the Americana clay confetti, and I'll add that in as well. Then all I have to do is peel off the release papers on those foam strips that I laid down and place the star window right on top, and that traps those shaker goodies inside. I cut out a bunch of different stars. I have some of the different stitched shapes in red and blue cardstock, as well as silver mirror cardstock and white cardstock, and I'm placing them all around this panel, and I'll flip it over to cut off anything that hangs off the edge, like these white larger stars. I just want really to use a bunch of the different stitched looks because they're all so much fun. There's lines, there's stitched circles, there's stitched grids, there's a double stitched star, so you really get a lot of different elements in that die set. I stamped the sentiment "You're My Hero" from the Helper Vehicles stamps set, and then I cut that down to a little sentiment strip and placed it right on the shaker, and then I added a few white little fun stars from that Americana clay confetti, and I thought this was a great card for somebody who serves in the military or other acts of patriotic service. I shared before that I would show the Rocketship shaker in more detail in another card, so this is it. I have an A2 piece of white cardstock and I have Distress Oxide ink and tumbled glass. You can see that I'm not fully coloring in this panel. I'm leaving big spots of white, but I'm doing it in a way that is very fluffy looking and circular around the clouds so that the open spaces will be those clouds in a blue sky. So here you can see that the Rocketship shaker can be layered up with a bunch of different pieces here. You can also, this piece that I'm gluing here, you can use that die to cut out the center of the rocket, and that's how you would create it into a shaker. But I wanted to use a bunch of glitter cardstock and fun foiled cardstock and then some glossy black cardstock for this rocket and keep this card very simple and clean. It does say "You are out of this world," which I thought was perfect for this Rocketship. Next up, we have the utility vehicles, stamps, and dies. So we've done construction helper vehicles, and now these are utility vehicles. We have a tow truck, we have a mail truck, we have a garbage truck, and then a bunch of different accessories and some really cute sentiments as well, and everything can be cut out. I'm stamping "Sending Smiles" in the center of a white piece of cardstock, and I'm using the Eyelet ovals dies to cut out that sentiment in white cardstock. Then I'll layer it over another Eyelet oval in blue cardstock and place this at the top of my A2 white piece of cardstock background. Next, I stamped, colored, and die cut a bunch of the postal elements from the utility vehicles, stamps, and dies. I love the little letters that you can create along with the packages and cute items for that postal truck. Sometimes you need to make a card where a flower isn't the right image to put on it, and I hope that you found something you love in this month's Pretty Pink Posh release. But let me know if you have a favorite in the comments down below. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. Sometimes you need to make the right Sometimes you need to make a card where the flower, the only flower. As always, okay, that's it, as always.